until the command control centers, the rocket launching capabilities are knocked out, till Hamas is finished, essentially.
Actually, now 15 is the normal average number of Palestinians killed in airstrike here in Gaza. Mostly it's even more than that. The reason why is because lately most of the Israeli airstrikes are targeting residential buildings, homes inside refugee camps, gatherings, for example, gathering in front of a bakery, or people are trying to refill water tanks. This is actually what is happening here in Gaza. To the Al Bureij refugee camp, this is a very big refugee camp located in eastern middle Gaza. We have thousands, hundreds of thousands of Palestinian families residing there. Actually, most of the people who are residing there at the Al Bureij refugee camp living under the poverty line. And what happened is that the Israeli Israeli warplanes struck an institution that was offering water to the people to refill the water, and then strikes continued. And also until this morning there was heavy shelling on Al Bureij refugee camp. We can say that at least 60% of this refugee camp was totally destroyed. All of the people who were residing there had to evacuate.
Staying with that conflict, some 400 or more foreigners and dual nationals managed to escape the conflict in Gaza into Egypt. The foreigners, along with 60 wounded Palestinians, made it into Egypt on Thursday. Egypt had said it would help evacuate 7,000 foreigners through the Rafah border crossing as pressure mounts for more aid to be allowed through. Our correspondent Yasser Hakim reports from El Arish, Egypt.
What the Egyptians are doing, what they can do, are two things, and that's what they're doing so far. First of all, they're the most number of amount of aid going into Palestine or to Gaza is from Egypt, and it's most of it is a lot of donations from Egyptians, medical donations, money, billions going in. That's covering the amount of aid, the thousands of tons of aid. Because according to the authorities, 70% of, or 60 or 70% of the aid that's going into Gaza is actually from Egyptians. So this is one side, even blood donations campaigns, food, medicine, everything. There's a lot of campaigns happening here where the public is joining in with donations for the Palestinians. Second of all is a huge campaign of boycotting all commodities or goods in the market that is being produced by countries that support Israel in its attack on the Palestinian civilians. So the US, Europe, most of the European countries and the US products in the market are now suffering from an acute drop in sales because of the Egyptians who are now boycotting all restaurants, products, clothes and everything that is produced by countries that are supporting Israel in its attack on Palestinians. And they're saying, let's take the alternative, the countries that support the Palestinian cause or the Arab cause or even humanity as civilians are being killed, regardless of the politics of it, and obviously the local products. So these are two of the things that the public is doing to try to have some kind of reaction to what they're seeing just across the border a few kilometers away.
Hello? Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Hardly, actually. Yeah, by the way, I think about mobile phone. It is expensive here as well. You ask for 5,000 shekels, 5,200 shekels for 14 plus something like this. There is limited mobile. Yeah, too much. The mobile? Yeah. Okay. 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 All right. I'll go to that. Thank you.
Hamas. Early Friday morning, fresh Israeli strikes rocked the Gaza Strip, with the health ministry there reporting at least 22 people killed. 7 of those were killed in Jabalia refugee camp. The latest developments signal a new phase in the nearly month-long conflict. It comes as top U.S. diplomat Antony Blinken arrived in Israel and held a meeting with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. This is Blinken's second visit since the conflict began on October the 7th. Blinken has said he would seek to ensure that harm to Palestinian civilians is reduced. But both Israel and the United States have ruled out a blanket ceasefire, saying it would allow Hamas to regroup and resupply. The Hamas-run Gaza Health Ministry says the death toll in Palestine has risen to more than 9,000 people. On the Israeli side, fighting has intensified between Israeli troops and Lebanese militant group Hezbollah. Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah is due to deliver a speech that is thought could have a profound impact on the region. Well, some 400 more foreigners and dual nationals managed to escape the conflict in Gaza into Egypt. The foreigners, along with 60 wounded Palestinians, made it into Egypt on Thursday. Egypt has said it would help evacuate 7,000 foreigners through the Rafah border crossing. A source at the crossing told AFP that it would open again on Friday. The UN says over 100 trucks with aid crossed into Gaza on Thursday, a significant increase from previous days. A total of 374 trucks have entered Gaza since the U.S. brokered deal was enacted 2 weeks ago. This is far short of what aid agencies say they need. Yasser Hakim met a Finnish Palestinian family that has survived the ordeal in Gaza ahead of their return to Finland. Well, let's now bring in Yasser Hakim to bring us the latest on what is happening at the Rafah border. Yasser, thank you so much for joining us. What is the latest, Yasser, from the border, especially on the crossing of injured people from Gaza and evacuation of foreign passport holders?
Yes, today we're told that around 596 who will be evacuated. The vast majority are from the U.S. The U.S. actually has the largest number of dual nationals that, as we understand, can reach around 1,000. So far, 400 have crossed. There's also from Croatia, from Mexico, from Sri Lanka, Germany. What happens is that they are being first verified from the Israeli side, who want to make sure that there are no infiltrators from there before they are allowed inside Egypt. Also from the Egyptian side, the authorities are coordinating with the diplomats and embassies from each nationality. You know, there's 60 nationalities. Today we expect around 15 nationalities to cross the border. So the embassies are coordinating with the officials to ensure that they are related to these embassies, or they have documents with them that the embassy can verify as well from its side, and to get the permits to stay in the country until they are able to leave. Most of them are taken directly from Rafah here on the border crossing directly to Cairo with their embassies and with the security officials. A few of them might stay for a few hours, rest in Al Arish city, and then they travel back to Cairo, and then they are set to leave to their home countries. As for the aid, as today we're told from the Red Crescent that 102 trucks have crossed the border. That's a good number compared to the last few days, especially that we're also still at the beginning of the day, hopefully more trucks would be crossing throughout the day. But still, the Red Crescent has issued a statement saying it's very, very, very small amount of aid that's going through in comparison to the people who need it, about 2 million people. So it's calling for more aid to come to Egypt and to Al Arish, and also calling for more aid to cross the border. Back to you.
See, Yasser, other than the people that the foreign passport holders who are crossing the border, we also understand that a lot of the Palestinians who've been severely injured have also been allowed to cross the border. What kind of treatment, Yasser, are you seeing, you know, especially in terms of emergencies? How is that being handled by the medical personnel at the border?
Yes, on the first day, Hannah, there was about 56 injured who entered the country, and then another 35. So the 2 days today, we haven't heard about any who have joined them yet from Gaza, from the Palestinian injured. What happens is that there are three hospitals here in El Arish around us here. There's the El Arish Hospital, the main hospital, the largest one. Then there is the Sheikh Zuwayed Hospital, which is around 10 kilometers from here, closer to the border. But it's a small hospital that can take around 5 to 10 beds with only emergency equipment there, but not to take the real heavy work like surgeries or critical injuries. And then there's Bir Ubaid, which is also around 80 kilometers after El Arish. So those three are the ones that are taking in most of those that need assistance. Those who are here are children. We've seen children who are injured, critically injured. We've seen elderly as well, and there are others who will be also taken to Cairo if it's a really situation where the hospitals here in Al Arish are unable to deal with these injured people, but also at the same time, there are facilities to help them on the longer term if they need recuperation after a surgery or after treatment. They'll not be returned immediately to Gaza, but will also be available for any recuperation. The facilities here, like you can see, the army, the military is going through and forth from the Rafah border behind us into Al Arish with all kinds of support through and forth. The whole day they've been going and coming here on this road. This is the main road that leads to the Rafah border crossing. And we've also seen trucks throughout the day going to the Rafah border crossing from here, passing through to get the assistance to the border. There are also new facilities. We're talking back about the health conditions and the health facilities. New facilities are being opened to attract even more or to accommodate even more Palestinians when they are able to cross the border here for treatment. There's two military hospitals under construction right now that will take around 50 to 100 beds each. So there's still work ongoing by officials here to ensure that if there is the need, it will be ready to accommodate whether the smaller refugee numbers or the ones who need medical treatment from injuries. Anna?
Yasser, thank you so much for all those details. Yasser Hakim is in Al Arish near the Rafah border crossing between Egypt and Gaza. Well, Britain's King Charles and Queen Camilla have visited a naval base in Kenya's port city of Mombasa.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has held talks with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in Tel Aviv. The Israeli military says its forces have encircled Gaza while Hamas is fighting back with hit-and-run attacks from underground tunnels. United Nations experts are calling for a humanitarian ceasefire amid what the organization terms a grave risk of genocide. In the West Bank, at least 5 Palestinians have been killed after an Israeli raid on Jenin. For more, let's go to Stephanie Freed, who is live now in Tel Aviv. Stephanie, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is in Tel Aviv for the latest round of talks with Israeli officials. What can you tell us?
Well, he's been meeting with the Prime Minister. That was his first meeting. That's Benjamin Netanyahu in Tel Aviv. He'll be sitting in on a war cabinet session, which will be talking about strategy, tactics. He is coming here to deliver a number of messages or to negotiate or talk about a whole laundry list of issues. And here's what we've got. Here's what we understand. The U.S. is going to push for limited Gaza strikes in the south. Israel had warned people, get out of the north. That's where we're concentrating. That's right now where the fight is concentrated in the north around Gaza City. But as well, Israel continues striking sometimes in the south, and that's where people were told to go. So there's going to be pressure there on the part of the U.S. administration to limit those strikes as well. The U.S. administration will be talking about pauses in these strikes, in Israel's operation, humanitarian pauses, which would allow for not only the U.S. is hoping that U.S. citizens will be able to get out of Gaza, and that includes maybe perhaps hostages that are being held, but also for this dire humanitarian situation and crisis inside of Gaza to allow to ease an easing of that somewhat. Because as this operation continues, the criticism is growing, and the analysis that I'm reading and that I'm seeing, the people that I'm talking to, analysts, Israel has a limited, and the U.S. really has a limited window here for how much movement there is in terms of being able to continue to work with their Arab allies, Arab nations, leaders of those nations in this region without some sort of pause, humanitarian and otherwise. As well, let's see here, the Secretary of State, he'll be making statements slightly before Hassan Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah in Lebanon, is going to go public with his statements in a few hours after Friday prayers let out. And that's strategy as well. That's a strategy that the U.S. is going to talk first. And he is here. The appearance of being here physically is to show Lebanon that the U.S. is still here, still standing by Israel. And so that's a strategy. And that's I don't want to say a PR move, but in a sense, it is sort of a move on the part of the United States. After Antony Blinken leaves here, he will be going to Amman. On Saturday, there's going to be a meeting of foreign ministers of Arab countries in this region. So what happens here is going to certainly be influential in the talks in Amman as well. One of the things that the Secretary of State is here to discuss is the day after. The day after Israel says that it's going to knock Hamas out of Gaza and finish its operations there. What next?
About the encircling of Gaza and the IDF's reaction to Houthi attacks near Eilat. What are the latest developments on these fronts from the Israeli side?
Well, Israel says that it continues. The focus, again, is Gaza City because the infrastructure of Hamas and the command and control center, it's there, according to Israel's intel and independent intelligence sources. It's underground, it's above ground, and that's the focus for Israel's operations in Gaza right now. So they've got engineers, specialized engineer corps that are going in. They're exploding tunnels. They're shutting down tunnels. They're also using robots to go into tunnels. They're detonating explosives. They're basically focusing on that area, and that's Gaza right now. And for days we've been hearing about intense fighting as these ground ops and the armory And these units are going in infantry with air cover and airstrikes to back that up, to flush out essentially Hamas fighters. You were asking about the Houthis, the Iranian-backed Houthis, and they're firing missiles in the southern resort city of Eilat. That's happened a few times. Israel has intercepted, and the U.S. actually has intercepted several missiles. It's a consideration. It's not active. Lebanon right now is a much more active zone in the north. Israel, Lebanon, with mortars being fired, anti-tank missiles being fired, and that's continuous. And that is a consideration, certainly. What is Hassan Nasrallah, who's the leader of Hezbollah in Lebanon, what's he going to say in his speech today? All eyes will be on that, listening, hearing. Will there be some sort of declaration, waiting for that? And one more note that's important to take into consideration right now. Russia essentially controls the skies over Syria, and right now the relations between Russia and Israel have declined, certainly, since the start of this war. Those ties are worsening. Israel now has been carrying out strikes in Syria, counter-strikes, without notifying Russia in advance. We're also hearing word that the Wagner group, which is controlled by Russia's government, were operating most notoriously inside of Ukraine, that they may be supplying air defense systems to Hezbollah in Lebanon. That's another development that we're hearing about now.
Thank you, Stephanie Freed, live in Tel Aviv. Egypt's Rafah border crossing with Gaza has opened for limited evacuations for the first time since October 7th. Injured Palestinians and foreign passport holders have been granted passage via the crossing. Our correspondent Yasser Hakim reports from Al Arish, Egypt.
What the Egyptians are doing, what they can do, are two things, and that's what they're doing so far. First of all, they're the most number of amount of aid going into Palestine or to Gaza is from Egypt, and most of it is a lot of donations from Egyptians, medical donations, money, billions going in. That's covering the amount of aid, the thousands of tons of aid, because according to the authorities, 70% of, or 60 or 70% of the aid that's going into Gaza is actually from Egyptians. So this is one side, even blood donations campaigns, food, medicine, everything. There's a lot of campaigns happening here where the public is joining in with donations to the Palestinians. Second of all is a huge campaign of boycotting all commodities or goods in the market that is being produced by countries that support Israel in its attack on the Palestinian civilians. So the US, Europe, most of the European countries and the US products in the market are now suffering from an acute drop in sales because of the Egyptians, who are now boycotting all restaurants, products, clothes and everything that is produced by countries that are supporting Israel in its attack on Palestinians. And they're saying, let's take the alternative, the countries that support the Palestinian cause or the Arab cause or even humanity, as civilians are being killed, regardless of the politics of it, and obviously the local products. So these are two of the things that the public is doing to try to have some kind of reaction to what they're seeing just across the border a few kilometers away.
Let's cross over to Gaza now, where Noor Harazin is standing by. Noor, Israel says it has encircled Gaza. What is the latest update on military operations where you are?
Well, here is what is happening. Basically, the Israeli military started its wide-scale land invasion in northern Gaza. They entered the area of Beit Hanun, and now they are very close to central Gaza City. At the same time, they also entered from the eastern side. Israel also has full control over the western side of Gaza, of the shores of Gaza, by the Israeli naval forces. And here is what is happening. Actually, the Israeli forces now has incursioned close to the Turkish hospital, and this hospital is located in an area that is separating southern Gaza from northern Gaza. The Israeli forces are now also shooting and firing towards any car that tries to move from northern Gaza to southern Gaza, or from southern Gaza to northern Gaza. Over the past 24 hours, the Israeli forces targeted a UN bus with UN workers inside it, targeted several ambulances and also several civilian cars with people that are trying to flee and evacuate. And just here in Shuhada al-Aqsa hospital, we received the bodies of 11 people that were taking a car from northern Gaza to southern Gaza. 8 of them are children. They were all killed when the Israeli military fired toward them in the car. So people here are getting a full message that they should not move around, they should not go to northern Gaza. And yes, apparently the Israeli military have encircled and isolated northern Gaza and Gaza City from the rest areas of the Gaza Strip.
The Rafah border crossing has remained open for a second day. And what's the current humanitarian situation in Gaza?
Well, the main reason of the reopening of Rafah border for these 2 days is actually to allow tens of Palestinians who got injured in Gaza to leave to get treatment in Egypt. Most of the people with the injuries that managed to leave to Egypt are in critical condition, and also to allow hundreds of foreigners or Palestinians with dual nationalities to leave the Gaza Strip and evacuate the Gaza Strip. And this is something that their embassies, American or European, have been working on since day one of this war. At the same time, yes, Egypt did allow a number of aid to enter the Gaza Strip. Tens of aid was of the trucks had water. Others were canned food, and also we have several trucks that actually had blankets and toys for the children, clothes. But again, this is not enough to meet the needs of the Gaza Strip, and this is all because more people are moving around looking for a shelter, especially that the Israeli airstrikes have expanded around the Gaza Strip, not only in northern Gaza but also in southern Gaza, and also in areas like Rafah and Khan Yunis. The Gaza Strip at least need 100 aid trucks daily just to meet the needs of the people.
Thank you, Noor Razin, live in Gaza. Meanwhile, Pakistan has opened more border centers to expel tens of thousands of undocumented Afghan nationals. Facilities at the northwestern border crossing of Torkham have been increased 3 times.
مش عارف يا راجل انا غاد وقاعد بشتغل انا غاد
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has held talks with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in Tel Aviv. The Israeli military says its forces have encircled Gaza City as Hamas fights back with hit-and-run attacks from underground tunnels. Our correspondent Stephanie Freed reports from Tel Aviv, and Noor Harazin comes to us from Gaza.
Well, he's been meeting with the Prime Minister. That was his first meeting. That's Benjamin Netanyahu in Tel Aviv. He'll be sitting in on a war cabinet session, which will be talking about strategy, tactics. He is coming here to deliver a number of messages or to negotiate or talk about a whole laundry list of issues. And here's what we've got. Here's what we understand. The U.S. is going to push for limited Gaza strikes in the south. Israel had warned people, get out of the north. That's where we're concentrating. That's right now where the fight is concentrated in the north around Gaza City. But as well, Israel continues striking sometimes in the south, and that's where people were told to go. So there's going to be pressure there on the part of the U.S. administration to limit those strikes as well. The U.S. administration will be talking about pauses in these strikes, in Israel's operation, humanitarian pauses. The Secretary of State, he'll be making statements slightly before Hassan Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah in Lebanon, is going to go public with his statements in a few hours after Friday prayers let out.
Basically, the Israeli military started its wide-scale land invasion in northern Gaza. They entered the area of Beit Hanun, and now they are very close to central Gaza City. At the same time, they also entered from the eastern side. Israel also has full control over the western side of Gaza, off the shores of Gaza, by the Israeli naval forces. And here is what is happening. Actually, the Israeli forces now has incursioned close to the Turkish hospital, and this hospital is located in an area that is separating southern Gaza from northern Gaza. The Israeli forces are now also shooting and firing towards any car that tries to move from northern Gaza to southern Gaza, or from southern Gaza to northern Gaza. Over the past 24 hours, the Israeli forces targeted a UN bus with UN workers inside it, targeted several ambulances, and also several civilian cars with people that are trying to flee and evacuate.
Egypt's Rafah border crossing with Gaza has opened for limited evacuations for the first time since October 7th. Injured Palestinians and foreign passport holders have been granted passage via the crossing. Our correspondent Yasser Hakim reports from Al Arish, Egypt.
What the Egyptians are doing, what they can do, are two things, and that's what they're doing so far. First of all, they're the most number of amount of aid going into Palestine or to Gaza is from Egypt, and most of it is a lot of donations from Egyptians, medical donations, money, billions going in. That's covering the amount of aid, the thousands of tons of aid, because according to the authorities, 70% of, or 60 or 70% of the aid that's going into Gaza is actually from Egyptians. So this is one side, even blood donations campaigns, food, medicine, everything. There's a lot of campaigns happening here where the public is joining in with donations for the Palestinians. Second of all is a huge campaign of boycotting all commodities or goods in the market that is being produced by countries that support Israel in its attack on the Palestinian civilians. So the US, Europe, most of the European countries and the US products in the market are now suffering from an acute drop in sales because of the Egyptians, who are now boycotting all restaurants, products, clothes and everything that is produced by countries that are supporting Israel in its attack on Palestinians. And they're saying, let's take the alternative, the countries that support the Palestinian cause or the Arab cause or even humanity, as civilians are being killed, regardless of the politics of it, and obviously the local products. So these are two of the things that the public is doing to try to have some kind of reaction to what they're seeing just across the border a few kilometers away.
The United Nations General Assembly on Thursday voted overwhelmingly against the U.S. economic and trade embargo against Cuba, first imposed in 1960. 187 countries voted to end the sanctions. Two nations, the U.S. and Israel, voted to continue. Ukraine was the only country that abstained from the vote. Luis Chirino reports from Havana.
This is the 31st year in a row that the international community has overwhelmingly demanded an end to the U.S. embargo against Cuba. The resolution is not legally binding or enforceable, but it does reflect world opinion. Cuban Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez says the more than 60-year blockade violates the rights of all Cuban men and women, depriving families of basic goods, including food and medicine.
From March 1st, 2022 to February 28, 2023, the damage inflicted by the U.S. blockade translated into more than $4.8 billion. That is $405 million per month and $1 million every 2 hours, affecting the lives of the Cuban people.
During debates prior to voting on the Cuban draft resolution, representatives of nations and regional blocs like the G77 and the Caribbean Community urged the U.S. to lift the embargo.
Producto de la aplicación del bloqueo.
As a consequence of the U.S. blockade, Cuba cannot purchase the appropriate drugs to treat child cancer. Cuban children suffering from cancer should not suffer from this anachronistic and lacerating policy.
Other speakers from Asia, Africa, and the Caribbean denounced the long-standing U.S. policy for violating the Cuban people's human rights, the UN Charter, and international law, and urged the United States to immediately lift its embargo. Bruno Rodriguez said the U.S. restrictions are an act of economic warfare that violates human rights and affect all areas of Cuban society, including education, healthcare, energy, and finances. The vote on the resolution was 187 to end the sanctions, and 2, the United States and Israel, voting to continue, with 1 abstention, Ukraine. Many experts say the U.S. embargo has not achieved its goal, toppling the Cuban socialist government. Instead, it has only brought hardships to the Cuban people. Luis Chirino, CGTN, Havana.
U.S. prosecutors say former Memphis police officer Desmond
situation. We're joined in the studio by Professor John Gong. Professor, let's start with the cost of war. Of course, we just reported human cost, a humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Now let's go to Israel. It's reported that 10% of the country's workforce have been called up to duty, and a large part of the Israeli economy have ground to a halt. Can Israel bear this cost?
It's a huge cost to the Israeli economy. If you just look at the manpower, even from a university perspective, I was told like 50% of the student population in universities are now at the front line, and that's a very large number. Let alone people employed in different walks of life. Israel is noted for its innovation. Its economy has been built on huge infusion of venture capitals from Europe, from the United States, and I think all these infusion of capitals will be temporarily halted, if not forever gone. That we don't know. So that's a very large blow to the local economy. And the sad thing is that it doesn't look like it's going to stop. The war's not going to stop anytime soon. So it looks like this situation is going to last for a while.
So let's talk about the larger impact. What about commodity prices? For example, oil prices have been fluctuating in recent weeks. Do you think this will continue?
Yeah, what I've heard is that prices at grocery stores have definitely gone up, but not a whole lot. But it has gone up. The local currency, shekel, has depreciated significantly, even though there's no shortages of groceries, there's no sort of panic buying at this point. But I think the strain on the economy is going to take a toll eventually. I know Israel is not a very large economy. It has a population of about 9 million people. With a shock like this, especially with a shock, essentially is a supply shock from economics point of view, with a shock like this that particularly going to last for some time, it's going to be very difficult for the economy.
Thank you very much, Professor John Gong there. For more on the situation, let's cross live to our correspondent Stephanie Fried in Tel Aviv. Stephanie, US President Joe Biden has rejected the international community's call for a ceasefire, but now he says he wants a humanitarian pause. How has Israel responded to this statement?
Well, that's right. And the rejection of the ceasefire is because the understanding is, as Israel has put it, and the U.S. has backed Israel, which is what happened, the mass killings, the savage killings carried out by Hamas inside of Israel on October 7th. That's not going to happen again as far as they're concerned here, and the U.S. administration is backing that. However, you're asking about the humanitarian pause. That's a call really to try and negotiate the hostages that are being held in Gaza for the most part, and that's from dozens of different countries, their nationalities spread across various countries, dozens different represented there. The hostage number has now been elevated to 242, and the reason that number continues to go up and up is because of intelligence and artificial intelligence gathering methods that are being used on this side to determine where the hostages are, who they are, who is a hostage, who is not, and as well as it goes to forensics here on the ground in terms of gathering remains of those who were murdered on October 7th here by Hamas. So that humanitarian pause would be an attempt at trying to negotiate a release of the hostages. Hamas has said that they'll release the internationals, not necessarily the young children, the babies, or the women, or the senior citizens that are being held, but those who hold international or dual nationalities or international nationalities. So Israel will certainly comply with that if that's a demand or if it's a heavy suggestion, let's say, on the part of the U.S. administration, and that's because of the relationship and the technical matters surrounding that relationship, if the U.S. suggests that.
Well, Stephanie, let's go to the overall diplomatic front, with Jordan recalling its ambassador to Israel and another trip for U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken to Tel Aviv. Tell us more about all those activities.
Well, that's right. And Jordan's ambassador is being recalled as well. Jordan has said that the Israeli ambassador to Jordan, they're saying, don't come back to Jordan. The ambassador, she left, and they're saying, don't bother coming back right now. Now, that's being viewed as cosmetic and for public's sake, for the most part. Bear in mind, more than 50% of Jordan's population is Palestinian. Right now, the understanding, according to intelligence sources, is that the population, obviously, as we see in the protests, they're not happy about what's happening in Gaza, and that could destabilize Jordan. It could destabilize the kingdom, destabilize the government. They want that stability, so the Jordanian government needs to show that they are vehemently opposed to what's happening. But at the same time, bear in mind, numerous U.S. military bases are based in Jordan, trainings. There's joint cooperation between the militaries. Israel is a part of that, and that's been ongoing for decades. So that's something to take into consideration. Yes, Antony Blinken comes back for a third time since this war started. He'll be arriving on Friday. At the same time, we're waiting or expecting to hear a speech from Hezbollah leader, also on Friday, Hassan Nasrallah out of Lebanon. He's in hiding. He's going to break that. It's not that he'll come out, but there will be a recorded, he'll be recording and disseminating something that he has to say about the situation here. So waiting to hear what he has to say, because of course you mentioned the troop buildup. That's in response to aggression from Lebanon, and that's been a concern. Will Lebanon get involved in what's happening in this war? Will this fan out to a regional conflict?
Thank you very much. Our correspondent Stephanie Fried in Tel Aviv. Now let's go to our correspondent Noor Harazain in Gaza. Noor, some hospitals in Gaza have shut down, while others are still running on backup generators. What more can you tell us about the latest situation?
Well, right now I am inside the Shuhada Al-Aqsa Hospital, which is located in Deir al-Balah city, and this is the one and only hospital that is still operating in Middle Gaza. So actually this hospital is receiving people from different areas in Middle Gaza, like Deir al-Balah, Al-Nusayrat, Al-Maghazi, Al-Burayj camp, all in one hospital. What is happening around me is actually a number of ambulances coming from two different areas. One Israeli airstrike hit a bakery around the Abu Sarar neighborhood in Al-Nusayrat, while hundreds of people were standing in a queue waiting their turn to buy bread. The other attack happened in Al-Burayj refugee camp, when the Israeli warplanes targeted a building that has an institution where people go there and fill water, because there is water tanks there. And also we're talking about hundreds of people that were in the area trying to get a turn to fill their barrels of water. We're witnessing tens of people that are arriving to this one only hospital, and this means that it is more than the capacity of this hospital. This hospital was made for only the residents of Deir al-Balah, but because of the continuous Israeli attacks and because of the lack of medicine and medical supplies in other hospitals, all the hospitals around the area of Middle Gaza stopped, and only the Shuhada Al-Aqsa hospital, where I am standing, is operating. Same thing is happening actually in Gaza and around the Gaza Strip. In Gaza, the only two main hospitals that are still operating are the Al-Quds Hospital in Tel al-Hawa neighborhood, and also Al-Shifa Hospital. And actually over the past two nights there were heavy Israeli shelling around these two hospitals, even though we're talking about hundreds of thousands of families that are taking shelter inside the hospitals. And this is actually the situation of hospitals here in Gaza.
Noor, with the Rafah border opening, has the trickle of aid had any noticeable effect on Gaza people where you are?
Well, the people here in Gaza feel like they are trapped. Egypt reopened the Rafah border to allow very little of humanitarian aid to enter the Gaza Strip and also allow a number, tens of those who were injured in Gaza to leave to Egypt to get treatment there, and also hundreds of people who are foreigners or holding other nationalities than Palestinians, mostly from the US and Europe. All of these people managed to get out of Rafah border. However, we're talking about 2.3 million Palestinians that are still trapped in the Gaza Strip under the fire of the Israeli warplanes and Israeli tanks, and a continuous humanitarian crisis here in Gaza. The people did not feel any change regarding on the ground here. They did not feel any change on the ground regarding the aid that is coming from Egypt. The reason why is because this aid is very little comparing to the needs of the people of Gaza. We're talking about more than 1 million people that fled their homes and now sheltering and taking shelter in southern Gaza. We're talking about hundreds of people that are arriving to the hospital either injured or even killed. So the whole system here in Gaza, the whole humanitarian system is just collapsing here in the Gaza Strip, and actually things are going from bad to worse even though there is aid coming in.
Thank you very much and stay safe. Our correspondent Noor Harazin in Gaza. Egypt has reiterated that it will not accept any permanent refugees despite opening its border to treat Palestinians in need of urgent medical care. Yasser Hakim reports from Al-Arash city near the Rafah crossing with Gaza.
Egypt is saying that Israel is trying to push the Palestinians out of their land in Gaza into Egypt so that Egypt will be the new enclave instead of Gaza, and that Gaza would be then occupied by Israel. So this is Egypt's point of view. So Egypt is saying this is their homeland as Palestinians. They have to stay in their homeland, and Egypt will provide all the necessary care for them to stay in their homeland and not to be displaced. And that's the word that was used by the Egyptian president. And the only way to solve this issue, according to officials here, is for Israel to abide by international law and UN resolutions which refer to a ceasefire and to cease from bombarding Palestinian civilians, and to accept a peace, a permanent peace based on two states, Palestinian and Israeli states, living in peace with East Jerusalem, the Palestinian capital, according to the 1967 borders. And this is according to the UN resolutions, not Egypt, not the Arab world, but this is what the international community has said, and the UN resolutions have falsified more than once.
أنا من شمال قطاع غزة. طلعنا الاحتلال الإسرائيلي بلغنا إنه نخلي البيت فوري. قلنا وين نروح؟ قال اطلعوا على في نص غزة، اطلعوا. المربع كله هذا بلغوه إنه يخلي كله. أنا ما إجا في بالي إلا جهازي، أنا طلعت بعبايتي ومنديلي، هو اللي إجا عبالي جهازي عشان بتنفس. لو ما في جهاز أنا الجهاز هذا لو مش موجود أنا بعوض الله علي. أنا هذا بساعدني للتنفس الرئتين. أنا مريضة أزمة وألياف على الرئتين عندي، وشايلة الغدة وضغط، صعوبة والله. أنا شحنته أول مرة عند جماعة، وثاني مرة ما وديته عند الجماعة من العصر لليل، طلع مش مشحون. جيت أشغل تعبت في الليل، جيت شغلته ما في شحن بالمرة وفيش كهرب. وين بدي أشحنه في الليل؟ الأمنين في بيوتهم بنزلوا الدور عليهم وهم أمنين في بيوتهم. احنا بيتنا انقصف بيتنا. وطلعنا من مكان لمكان، طلعنا من معسكر جباليا للجلاء، ومن الجلاء للرمال، ومن الرمال لعسكولة والطريق والقصف فوق روسنا ونشهد على حالنا. الصعوبة الطريق كانت صعبة جدا جدا. ياما وصلنا هان ما في أمان في قطاع غزة بالمرة. جينا للصناعة هان وكالة الغوث الدولية، لكن ما في أمان في قطاع غزة بالمرة. صعب الوضع هنا، صعب جدا جدا. يعني الخيمة كلها مترين بمترين ورطوبة أصلا. يما الحكين انخنكت، افتحت بالخيمة انخنكت يما. صرت طول الليلة كحكح واشغل البخاخة الزرقاء هذه اللي معايا. يما طلع نهار. بدنا أمن وأمان وحياة واستقرار، وبدنا نعيش زي الشعوب العربية زي ما أي بلد عايشة. بدنا نعيش إحنا بأمان وحياة طبيعية هيك، مش كله خوف ورعب وكل سنتين إن حرب.